sometimes, the world turns its back on the broken. Pain, fear, and loneliness become all someone knows, until one small act of kindness changes everything. This is a story about survival, about a woman pushed to the edge, and about a man who chose compassion over indifference. It's not just about being saved, it's about being seen. Kindness is often misunderstood as something small, something soft, almost insignificant in a world that seems to value strength, power, and control. But in reality, kindness can be the most powerful force a person can offer, especially when someone is standing at the edge of giving up. In this story, kindness is not just a gesture, it becomes the line between life and death. When the cowboy first sees her lying in the dirt, there is no obligation pulling him closer. No one is watching him, no one will judge him if he walks away, and there is no reward waiting for him if he stays. The world around him has taught the same lesson it teaches everyone else, that survival comes first, that getting involved in someone else's pain often leads to trouble. He understands the risks. A beaten woman in the middle of nowhere doesn't just appear without a story behind her, and stories like that tend to bring danger along with them. Still, he stops. That moment, when he chooses to stop instead of riding past, is where kindness begins. It is not dramatic or heroic in the way people imagine bravery to be. There is no audience, no applause. Just a quiet decision to care when it would be easier not to. As he kneels beside her, he doesn't see a stranger. He sees a human being who has been reduced to nothing by someone else's cruelty. Her injuries tell a story he doesn't need to hear in words. The bruises, the broken skin, the way her body curls inward even in unconsciousness. It all speaks of fear, of suffering, of someone who has been treated as if her life had no value. Kindness, in that moment, is not about fixing everything. It is about acknowledging that her life still matters. He could have convinced himself otherwise. He could have told himself that she was too far gone, that helping her would only delay the inevitable. He could have justified leaving her behind as an act of practicality. People do that every day. Turning away not because they are cruel, but because they are afraid, or tired, or unwilling to carry someone else's burden. But kindness refuses to look away. When she whispers please, it is not a request filled with strength. It is barely a sound, fragile and broken, yet it carries everything she has left. It is not just a plea for help, it is a plea to not be abandoned again. And he answers it. The words "I won't leave you" are simple, but they carry weight. They become a promise, one that transforms his role from a passerby into something much more significant. In that instant, kindness becomes commitment. Bringing her back to his ranch is not the end of his kindness, it is only the beginning. Real kindness is not a single action, it is something that continues, something that requires effort, patience, and consistency. It is easy to help someone once. It is much harder to stay when the situation becomes difficult, when progress is slow, when there are no signs of improvement. She doesn't wake up immediately. She doesn't thank him. She doesn't even know he is there. Still, he stays. He cleans her wounds carefully, even when they look too painful to touch. He makes sure she eats, even when she cannot feed herself. He sits through long nights, listening to her restless breathing, watching for any sign that she might slip away. There are moments when it would be easier to give up, to believe that his efforts are not enough. But kindness is not measured by certainty of success. It is measured by the willingness to try anyway. Every small action he takes becomes a thread, slowly pulling her back from the edge. A sip of water, a bandage changed, a blanket adjusted, these are not grand gestures, but together they create something powerful. They create a sense of safety, something she has likely not felt in a long time. Even before she is fully conscious, she begins to respond to that safety. Her body relaxes slightly. Her breathing steadies. The fear that once held her tightly starts to loosen its grip, even if only a little. Kindness works quietly like that. It does not demand attention. It does not announce itself. It simply exists, steady and patient, waiting to be felt. When she finally begins to wake, her confusion is natural. Pain still lingers, and so does fear. the world she remembers is one where people hurt her, where trust leads to suffering. In that world, kindness feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. Why would someone help her without asking for anything in return? This question becomes one of the most important parts of her healing. Physical wounds can be treated with care and time, but emotional wounds require something deeper. They require a reason to believe that things can be different. His answer, because you needed it, is not complicated. It is not wrapped in philosophy or justification. It is simple, honest, and direct. That simplicity matters. Kindness does not need to explain itself in grand terms. It does not need to prove its worth. It exists because someone chooses to care, nothing more and nothing less. For her, that realization begins to shift something inside. She has likely spent a long time believing that help always comes with conditions, that people only give when they expect something in return. His actions challenge that belief, not through words, but through consistency. Day after day, he continues to show up. He does not rush her recovery. He does not expect gratitude. He does not push her to talk about what happened before she is ready. Instead, he gives her space, while also making sure she knows she is not alone. That balance is another form of kindness, understanding that healing cannot be forced. There are moments when she struggles. Memories surface, bringing fear and pain with them. There are times when she withdraws, unsure if she can trust what she is experiencing. In those moments, kindness becomes even more important. He does not try to fix everything. He does not dismiss her fear or tell her to simply move on. He remains present, offering quiet reassurance instead of empty solutions. Sometimes, kindness is just staying. As she slowly regains her strength, the impact of his actions becomes clearer. She is alive not just because he found her, but because he chose to continue helping her long after that first moment. Every step of her recovery is connected to the decision he made in the desert, to stop, to care, to act. Without that decision, her story would have ended very differently. Kindness, in this sense, becomes something far greater than a moral value. It becomes a force that actively shapes outcomes, that changes the direction of a life. It turns what could have been an ending into a beginning, what could have been silence into something that still has a voice. For the cowboy, kindness does not make him extraordinary in his own eyes. He does not see himself as a hero. To him, he simply did what felt right. But from her perspective, his actions mean everything. He becomes the reason she is still here, the reason she has a chance to rebuild. This contrast highlights another truth about kindness: it often feels ordinary to the person giving it, but extraordinary to the person receiving it. And that difference is what gives it so much power. Healing is rarely as simple as people want it to be. It does not follow a straight path, and it does not move at a steady pace. In this story, healing unfolds slowly, unevenly, and often painfully, revealing that recovery is not just about surviving what happened, but learning how to live again afterward. When the cowboy brings her back to the ranch, her body is the first battlefield. The injuries she carries are severe, layered with bruises, cuts, and exhaustion that go far beyond what is visible. Her breathing is shallow, her pulse weak, and there are moments when it feels like her body is deciding whether to keep going or to give in. At this stage, healing is fragile, almost uncertain. The cowboy does not expect immediate change. He does not look for signs of quick recovery or sudden improvement. Instead, he focuses on the smallest details: cleaning wounds, keeping her warm, making sure she has water. These actions may seem basic, but they are essential, forming the foundation of everything that comes next. Physical healing begins in silence. There are no dramatic moments, no sudden awakenings. Days pass where nothing seems to change. Her condition remains the same, balanced between stability and risk. During these moments, patience becomes as important as care itself. There are setbacks. Fever rises unexpectedly, turning her skin hot and her breathing uneven. At times, her body reacts as if it is fighting something unseen, something deeper than the injuries themselves. The cowboy cannot control these moments, and that lack of control is part of the process. Healing is not something he can force, it is something he must support while her body does the work in its own time. Gradually, there are small signs of progress. Her breathing steadies. The fever breaks. The tension in her body eases slightly. These changes are subtle, easy to miss if someone is looking for something dramatic. But in reality, they are significant, marking the slow return of strength. When she finally opens her eyes, healing shifts from purely physical to something more complex. Consciousness brings awareness, and awareness brings memory. The pain is no longer just in her body, it begins to take shape in her mind. Her confusion is immediate. She does not recognize where she is, and more importantly, she does not understand why she is safe. Her past experiences have likely taught her that safety is temporary, that it can disappear without warning. This makes her cautious, even in a place where she is no longer in danger. Trust does not come naturally. It is not something she can simply decide to feel. Instead, it develops slowly, built on repeated experiences that show her she is not being harmed. The cowboy plays a quiet but steady role in this part of her healing. He does not overwhelm her with questions or force conversation. He understands, even without being told, that pushing too hard could undo the progress she has made. Instead, he allows her to observe, to take in her surroundings at her own pace. Every interaction becomes part of the healing process. The way he speaks calmly, the way he keeps his distance when needed, the way he respects her silence. These details matter more than any single action. They create an environment where she can begin to feel a sense of control again. Control is something she lost when she was hurt. Regaining it is a crucial step in her recovery. There are moments when fear returns without warning. A sudden sound, a movement, or even a memory can trigger a reaction. Her body tenses, her breathing quickens, and for a brief moment, it is as if she is back in that place of pain. These moments show that healing is not about forgetting, it is about learning how to exist despite the memories. The cowboy does not dismiss these reactions. He does not tell her that she is overreacting or that she should move on. Instead, he remains present, offering a sense of stability without trying to control her response. This approach allows her to process what she feels without adding pressure. Time becomes one of the most important elements in her healing. Each day adds something new, even if it is small. One day, she is able to sit up without assistance. Another day, she manages to take a few steps. These milestones are not celebrated with excitement, but they are acknowledged quietly, as part of a gradual progression. Physical strength returns before emotional strength fully follows. Her body begins to recover, but her mind continues to carry the weight of what happened. This imbalance is part of the challenge. It shows that healing is not a single process, but multiple processes happening at different speeds. There are days when she feels stronger, more stable, more willing to engage with the world around her. Then there are days when everything feels heavy again, when the effort of simply existing becomes overwhelming. These fluctuations are not signs of failure, they are part of the reality of recovery. The cowboy's consistency becomes a steady anchor in this shifting experience. He does not change his behavior based on her progress. Whether she is having a good day or a difficult one, he remains the same, calm, patient, and present. This consistency helps create a sense of predictability, something she can rely on. Predictability, in this context, becomes a form of safety. As time passes, she begins to participate more in her own recovery. She eats on her own, moves around the space with more confidence, and slowly starts to engage in small conversations. These actions represent more than just physical improvement, they show a growing willingness to reconnect with life. Still, healing does not erase what happened. The memories remain, sometimes clear and sometimes distant. There are moments when she reflects on her past, trying to understand it, trying to place it somewhere that does not control her present. This process is not guided by clear answers. There is no single moment where everything makes sense. Instead, it unfolds gradually, shaped by her experiences in the present and her ability to create new associations that are not defined by pain. The environment around her plays a significant role in this stage. The quiet of the ranch, the open space, the absence of chaos, all of these elements contribute to a sense of calm that contrasts with what she has known before. This contrast helps her recognize that her current reality is different from her past. Difference becomes important. It allows her to separate what was from what is. The cowboy's presence continues to support this separation. He does not try to replace her past or redefine it. Instead, he offers something new, something that exists alongside it. This approach allows her to build a future without needing to erase what came before. Healing, in this sense, becomes an act of layering, adding new experiences, new emotions, and new perspectives on top of what already exists. There are still moments of doubt. Times when she questions whether she will ever feel completely whole again. These thoughts are part of the process, reflecting the complexity of what she has been through. The cowboy does not provide easy answers to these doubts. He does not promise that everything will return to the way it was. Instead, he continues to support her in the present, focusing on what can be done rather than what cannot be changed. This focus helps shift her perspective. Instead of measuring her progress against an ideal of complete recovery, she begins to recognize the value of each step forward, no matter how small. Healing becomes less about reaching a final destination and more about continuing the process. Over time, the weight of her past begins to feel different. It does not disappear, but it becomes something she can carry with less strain. The fear that once dominated her reaction starts to lose its intensity, replaced by a growing sense of awareness and control. Her identity also begins to shift. She is no longer defined solely by what happened to her. Through the process of healing, she starts to see herself as someone who survived, someone who endured, and someone who is capable of moving forward. This shift is gradual, built on countless small moments rather than a single realization. The cowboy remains part of this journey, not as someone who leads it, but as someone who walks alongside her. His role does not change dramatically, but its impact continues to be significant. By staying consistent, by respecting her pace, and by allowing her to take ownership of her healing, he supports a process that is deeply personal and uniquely hers. Isolation has a way of reshaping a person from the inside out. It convinces them that they are alone not just in circumstance, but in existence, that no one will come, no one will understand, and no one will stay. In this story, isolation is not just a physical state, it is something deeply rooted in the woman's experience long before she is found in the desert. When she is first discovered, her isolation is absolute. There is no one around her, no voice calling her name, no hand reaching out to help. The empty land reflects the emptiness she feels within. She has been left behind not just by those who hurt her, but by a world that allowed it to happen without interruption. In that moment, isolation feels final, as if it is the only reality left to her. The cowboy's arrival disrupts that reality, but it does not immediately erase it. Connection does not form instantly just because someone chooses to help. In fact, the presence of another person can initially feel threatening rather than comforting. For someone who has been hurt, closeness can trigger the same fear as danger. When he brings her to the ranch, the physical distance between them becomes important. He does not hover over her constantly, nor does he try to force interaction. Instead, he allows space to exist, recognizing that connection cannot grow under pressure. This space becomes the first step away from isolation. Not by eliminating it, but by making it less suffocating. As she begins to regain awareness, her reactions are shaped by everything she has experienced. She watches him carefully, measuring his movements, his tone, his behavior. Trust is not something she offers freely, it is something she guards, something she has learned to protect because of how easily it can be broken. This guardedness is a form of isolation. Even in the presence of someone who is trying to help, she remains emotionally distant, uncertain whether she can allow herself to rely on him. The fear of being hurt again creates a barrier, one that cannot simply be removed through reassurance. The cowboy does not try to break that barrier directly. He does not demand trust or expect immediate openness. Instead, he focuses on consistency. Each day, his actions remain steady, predictable, and without hidden motives. This consistency becomes the foundation on which connection can begin to form. Connection, in this context, is not built through grand gestures or emotional declarations. It is built through repetition, through small, reliable interactions that slowly reshape her expectations. When he brings her food, he does so without hesitation. When he speaks, his tone remains calm and unthreatening. When she withdraws, he does not chase after her or question her silence. These patterns begin to create a sense of safety, and safety is essential for connection to exist. There are moments when she tests this emerging sense of safety, even if she is not fully aware of it. She might hesitate before accepting help, watching to see if his patience runs out. She might remain silent during conversations, observing whether he becomes frustrated or distant. Each of these moments serves as a way for her to measure whether he is truly different from what she has known before. His responses remain unchanged. He does not react with anger, disappointment, or impatience. By maintaining this steadiness, he shows her that connection does not have to come with conditions. Gradually, her behavior begins to shift. The distance she keeps starts to feel less necessary. She begins to respond more, even if only with short answers or quiet acknowledgements. These changes are subtle, but they represent an important movement away from isolation. The first real moments of connection often come in silence rather than conversation. Sitting in the same space without tension, sharing a quiet moment without fear, these experiences allow her to feel the presence of another person without the pressure of interaction. In these moments, connection exists simply through coexistence. Over time, words begin to carry more meaning. When she asks him why he helped her, it is not just a question, it is an attempt to understand the nature of their connection. His answer, simple and direct, reinforces the idea that his actions are not driven by obligation or expectation. This understanding helps reduce the uncertainty that feeds isolation. When intentions are clear and consistent, it becomes easier to believe in them. As their interactions continue, a rhythm develops. Daily routines create a structure that both of them begin to rely on. These routines, meals, conversations, shared tasks, become opportunities for connection to deepen naturally. They are not forced or planned, they emerge from the act of living in the same space. For her, participating in these routines represents a significant step. It means allowing herself to be part of something shared, rather than existing entirely on her own. Each small act of participation weakens the hold that isolation once had on her. There are still moments when isolation resurfaces. Memories, fears, and doubts can create distance even when someone else is physically present. During these times, she may withdraw again, becoming quiet or distant. These moments do not erase the connection that has been built, but they do challenge it. The cowboy's role during these moments remains consistent. He does not force her back into interaction or question her withdrawal. Instead, he allows her to take the space she needs while remaining available. This approach reinforces the idea that connection does not disappear when it is not actively expressed. Knowing that someone will remain, even in silence, changes the way isolation is experienced. It no longer feels permanent or absolute. As trust continues to grow, vulnerability becomes possible. She begins to share small pieces of herself. Thoughts, feelings, fragments of her past. These moments of sharing are significant because they involve risk. Opening up means allowing someone else to see parts of her that she may have kept hidden, parts that are shaped by pain and fear. The cowboy listens without interruption or judgment. He does not try to reshape her experiences or offer immediate solutions. By simply acknowledging what she shares, he validates her perspective, reinforcing the connection between them. This exchange of vulnerability strengthens the bond, turning it into something more than just coexistence. It becomes a relationship built on mutual presence and understanding. Connection also begins to influence how she sees herself. Isolation often leads to a distorted sense of identity, where a person defines themselves based on their suffering or their separation from others. Through connection, she starts to see herself differently. Not just as someone who was hurt, but as someone who is capable of forming meaningful relationships. This shift in self-perception is gradual, shaped by her interactions with him and her growing sense of belonging. Feeling connected allows her to move beyond the limitations that isolation once imposed. The environment around them supports this process. The openness of the land, once a symbol of emptiness, begins to feel different when shared with someone else. Spaces that once seemed isolating take on new meaning when they are experienced together. Shared experiences continue to build on this foundation. Whether it is a simple conversation, a quiet moment, or a task completed together, each interaction adds another layer to their connection. These layers accumulate over time, creating something stable and enduring. The fear of losing this connection does not disappear entirely. There are moments when she questions whether it will last, whether it could change or be taken away. These fears are part of her history, shaped by past experiences where connection was unreliable or harmful. The cowboy's consistency helps counter these fears, not by eliminating them, but by providing a different pattern. Over time, this new pattern becomes more familiar, gradually replacing the expectations shaped by her past. Connection, in this story, is not presented as a perfect or effortless bond. It requires patience, understanding, and a willingness to remain present even when things are uncertain. It grows slowly, shaped by both individuals and their shared experiences. As isolation loses its hold, connection becomes a defining part of her reality. It does not erase what she has been through, but it changes how she relates to it, offering a sense of belonging that stands in contrast to the loneliness she once knew. In the end, this story is not just about a woman who was saved in the middle of nowhere, and it is not only about a cowboy who chose to stop when others might have ridden past. It is about what happens after the moment of rescue, when silence replaces chaos, and when survival slowly turns into something deeper, living again. The desert where she was found once represented abandonment, pain, and the kind of loneliness that feels endless. But over time, that same place becomes the setting where something new begins to form. What was once a symbol of suffering gradually turns into a place of recovery, not because the land itself changes, but because her experience of it does. Her journey shows that being saved is not the end of struggle. It is only the beginning of a different kind of battle. The battle to rebuild trust, to accept care, and to believe that life can still hold something gentle after something so cruel. The wounds on her body heal faster than the wounds inside her mind, but even those emotional scars begin to shift when they are met with patience instead of pressure. The cowboy's presence remains steady throughout this transformation, not as someone who takes control of her life, but as someone who gives her space to reclaim it. He does not define her recovery. He simply supports it. That quiet form of strength becomes one of the most important forces in her healing. It shows that sometimes, the most powerful role a person can play is not to lead someone out of darkness, but to stay close enough so they are not alone while finding their own way forward. What makes this story meaningful is not the dramatic beginning, but the slow, almost invisible changes that follow. The small moments. Learning to trust a voice again, sitting without fear, speaking without hesitation, become the real milestones. They do not happen all at once, and they are not always noticeable in the moment, but together they form the path back to life. There is also a deeper truth hidden within their connection. It is not built on obligation or expectation. It is built on choice. He chooses to stay. She slowly chooses to open up. These choices, repeated over time, become the foundation of something stronger than either of them could have created alone. It is not a story of rescue alone, but of two lives quietly reshaped by the decision to remain present with each other. Even the idea of survival evolves throughout her journey. At first, survival means simply staying alive. Later, it becomes about enduring pain. But eventually, it transforms into something more meaningful. Learning how to exist without fear, controlling every breath, every thought, every moment. That transformation does not happen quickly, and it is never complete in a single instant. It is something that continues to unfold long after the worst moments are over. the story also reflects how healing is rarely visible from the outside. To someone watching, it might seem like nothing is happening for long stretches of time. But beneath the surface, change is constant. Trust is forming. Fear is loosening. Strength is returning in ways that cannot always be measured. What looks like stillness is often progress in disguise. In the same way, kindness in this story is not loud or dramatic. It does not announce itself as heroic. It simply exists in repeated actions, staying, helping, waiting, understanding. That kind of kindness does not demand recognition, yet it has the power to completely alter the direction of a life. As for connection, it becomes the quiet answer to everything isolation once convinced her was permanent. It proves that being alone is not always a fixed condition, and that even after deep suffering, it is still possible to be seen, to be heard, and to belong somewhere again. That belonging does not erase the past, but it changes how the past is carried. In the end, what remains is not just survival, but transformation. A life that was once defined by pain begins to hold space for something gentler. The past is still part of her, but it no longer defines her entirely. And in that space between what she was and what she is becoming, something new continues to grow quietly, steadily, and without needing to be rushed.